Let's go. Get your hands in the air now. Right now, right now. I said it goes like this. Her name was Lois Lane, and it wasn't their fault. They couldn't help but gawk when she walked into the room. She had on cheap perfume, some kind of jealous gloom. These boys would act like they would laugh, but I could tell they wanted to follow her back to her room. As for myself, I put the notion right on the shelf. How hard it is to be blown away, 'cause I could clearly not withstand the damage of falling for Miss Lois Lane. She started walking out, walking out, walking out, when I decided to plead for her heart. She shine, shine. They would stare and you know why, all dolled up like it was prom night. And I can't help but think of her right now, right now. 'Cause her name was Lois Lane, her name was Lois Lane, and it wasn't their fault, their fault. They couldn't help but gawk when she walked into the room. She had on cheap perfume, some kind of jealous gloom. These boys would act like they would laugh, but I could tell they wanted to follow her back to her room. 'Cause her name was Lois Lane, her name. As for myself, I put the notion right on the shelf. How hard it is to be blown away. I clearly could not withstand the damage of falling for Miss Lois Lane. My name is Clark, and I love her.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Uncommon Podcast. It's our 209th live stream, and happy Aloha Friday, everyone. We have made it to the end of the week, and we are here. It is time to relax and chill. I hope everyone has had a stress-free week. I'm pretty sure it's half and half with a lot of us, but you know what? I gotta say it. At least we made it to the end of the week, and guys, it is Aloha Friday. Over here in Hawaii, Aloha Friday is literally like a 1 week holiday. Every Friday we celebrate in Hawaii the end of the week, where we hang out with friends, we talk story, and we have a good time. And that is the format of the show, guys. So I really appreciate all of our fans and friends for always tuning in every single time, either on the live stream or on the recording and the playback after that. So let's have a good show, guys. We have a awesome guest. I've been looking forward to talking story with this guy because he is a fellow Trekkie like me, and I just can't wait to geek out. But before we do any of that stuff, let's get Dee into the studio. Dee, how are you?
I'm good. My mute was not muted. So yeah, I'm good. It's a foggy day, but it is still a beautiful day out there. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. It is the end of the week, so I'm really happy we get to chill out and relax tomorrow and just hang out and yeah, just maybe not do anything. Maybe.
Yes.
That'd be nice. But
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You know how it goes. I have thoughts in my head and it comes out of my mouth sometimes. So finish up what you were doing.
Like I said, sometimes I'm a goldfish, so I forget what I said. But yeah, it's gonna be a wonderful show. I can't wait to talk more with our special guest as well. We did have him on before on our sister show on BB Radio, but we're really happy to have him back on here on the podcast for Aloha Friday. So yeah, it's gonna be a great show.
It's going to be an awesome show. And then also, guys, I'm going to say hi really quick. We have Raven in the house. What is up, Raven? But I know our guest was here first. He's always the first in comments. Sorry, Pasternak. He always beats you, but that's okay. You got to keep up with Slider, man. Must be those portals he opens up. But anyways, also, we want to say hi to Superstar Money. What is up, Joe and Rob, whoever's behind the PFP today? But it's really good to see you guys. Haven't seen you guys in a while. So yeah, thank you for stopping by. We also have the biggest bro in the house. What is up, biggest bro? It is Friday. Absolutely, you guys. They do things right in Hawaii. Thank you. We try. We're on Hawaiian time, so we take our time over here. We also got Raven in the house. What is up, Raven? And we have vegan things. We have the comic guy. We've got Red Bull. What's up, Red Bull? Let's get it. All right, guys. Before we start, we have a commercial break. We'll be right back. And that is all we're going to say about that. Moving on. D, anything else before we head into the other studio?
Let's see. No, I think we should just bring him in. I don't know if is there a giveaway we should announce so they can start typing in, or you can cover that later. But yeah, we can get him in.
So yeah, guys. So if you want to enter a giveaway, thank you for reminding me, D. Hashtag engage right here. Hashtag engage for a chance to win a community-sponsored giveaway right here from a community member that has donated to the channel in the past. So, and we will let you guys know what you will be winning at the end of the show. So hashtag engage.
Engage.
And there you go. There you go, guys. And I think that's about it right there. So let's get them in, D.
Yes, let's bring them in.
All right, guys. We'll be right back. I forgot to do that. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who is the head of the Federation, as well as the guy who's been hiding the timer all these years, Slider.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
What's up, brother? How are you?
Doing good, man. Happy Friday to you.
Yeah, Aloha Friday.
Or should I say live long and prosper?
Yes, definitely.
Live long and prosper.
Okay, now we're getting very too much on the cornfields here, but Slider, really good to see you, man. How are you doing today? Happy Aloha Friday.
No, I'm doing good. A little tired, but yeah, I'm good.
Well, we're not going to try to keep you here too long. The last thing we want to do, in fact, I don't think we've had a guest fall asleep on us yet, but if we do, then that's the feedback that we needed to like really kick ourselves in the butt here. But
the FA.
Yeah, the FA fell asleep. Well, anyway, so guys, like I said before we start, we do have a giveaway going on. Enter hashtag engage in the comments down below for a chance to win a digital collectible from a community member that has donated in the past. And then Slider, we're just gonna get right into it, man. So it is a pleasure to have you on, because the one thing that I do know is that name of yours. It totally reminds me of like 90s sci-fi right there. And so like I kind of want to get into some of that. But before we do that, it's a question I like to ask, and I'm pretty sure this question was semi-asked in VV Radio, but I'm going to ask it again. Bailey, how did you find this space? Now, when I first saw you, I think you were just on the timeline, and then we started chatting about comic books. I can't remember, but over time, I remember you and I would have conversations about Babylon 5, Sequest, Star Trek, and also your name, Slider. So it seems like you've come from collecting and also like a sci-fi background as well. But like, how did you find the digital collecting space? What was the first project you got into, and how did you find Vivi?
Yeah, well, so I got into crypto in 2021, and I kind of just jumped in because I was in, I had done like traditional finance for like 10 years. I was in that. So like Bitcoin was interesting, and I had heard about it like way back in like 2012, and I kind of was interested, but then, I had my brother, family kind of like said, oh no, that's just for like criminals, like stay away from it. But the more I started researching it, it was like, okay, there's something here, a way to, beat inflation, just the whole, store of value. And so I started going down the rabbit hole, Bitcoin, then Ethereum, then, Cardano, like all them. And probably like mid 2021, I kind of started finding out about NFTs. And, I remember one person I used to watch back then was a guy called Crypto Stash. And he would cover a lot of like NFT art and different stuff like that, and in games that were coming out. So that kind of got me into a game called Gods Unchained. And why that kind of like, yeah, why that kind of got me is because it was like Magic, the game, the card game. And I played that like back in the 90s all the time with my brother, my cousin, my other cousin. Like we would always play. I mean, like all the time. So I had so many of those cards, when I was, in my teens. And so that kind of just that clicked with me because I knew that kind of thing. And it was, that was on IMX. So then I started learning about IMX and like, layer twos, and went down that whole rabbit hole. And, and then I did another game that was like a Theta Arena. It was like a battle kind of royale game. And you could like earn money and stuff, but it really wasn't that good. It was like a mobile one. But yeah, so I went on Gods Unchained, and I just did that. Like I grinded on Gods Unchained for probably like 3 or 4 months. And then I started getting, deeper into it. And I was still like, in the finance, world, like, I had like my brokerage account, I would trade, and I watched Andre Jick and then Meet Kevin. But Andre Jick had mentioned something about, the first Spider-Man on the blockchain. And I was like, okay, the first Spider-Man, like I didn't really know. And how he said it, he said like Vive. So it threw me off because I remember I typed in Vive. I went on Google. I'm like, okay, what's this Vive thing? And I typed it in, and nothing came up with Vive. So I was just kind of like, I don't know what he's talking about. And that was probably around like when I saw the video, like mid-November of 2021. So fast forward like a month or so, like around Christmas time, I saw another video that he had just put out, I think, or maybe it was a few weeks old, but it was about the first Spider-Man comic book on the blockchain. And that really like piqued my interest. And this time he actually said it right. He said VV. And I'm like, okay, well, that must be the same thing that he was talking about before. So I went in, I typed it in this time, and actually something came up, and I was like, oh, okay. So I like went on Google Play and like typed it in. I found VV, and then like, I didn't do anything with it right away. I waited probably like because of the holidays and everything till like the very end of January. I think my like VV birthday was like February 1st. So that's when that's kind of like when I found it. And then like, I loaded some money in, and then like the first drop for me was that morning when I like opened it up and like put some money in. It was like FA Monica Rambeau. And, I tried going for it, but I had no idea what was going on. Like, no, I mean, I saw a buy now button, and I waited like 10 seconds because I didn't think anything of it, and I pressed buy now. It was gone. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, this is a scam. I knew it was a scam, So, yeah. So then I'm like, okay, I don't know if it is, but so I went on YouTube, and then I saw OG Vault was streaming, and he had like 1,000 people in his live stream. So I'm like, okay, there's got to be something to this. So I was like watching the chats, listening to what he was saying and stuff, and then figured out like, okay, it's sold out instantly, and you got to be like extremely fast. So then I went down the rabbit hole of Vivi and spent the next like 2 weeks really just like finding any video I could find. I mean, I found like comics and crypto, NFT pirates. I saw Cavell, Randy, my collectibles, and sleeping. Those were the ones that really kind of like stuck with me just because they were more into the comics. So
remember VV Vision?
Yeah, I remember them. Yep. Yeah, so that was pretty much like the journey into into it, and then I didn't hit a drop for like 3 months because my internet and everything is so bad. So yeah.
I feel you. So like when we first started, and I've kind of said this story before, my chiropractor got me into the space. Shout out to Rob. And you know, my first NFT I purchased was well, I didn't purchase it actually. I think I got it airdrop for me, and it was from AMC. It was a golden popcorn bucket from their AMC Connect. You know, and we don't even have AMC here in Hawaii, but I wanted to like join it just mainly because I was invested in AMC at the time. You know, I got lucky. I was one of the lucky guys that got out of that pump and dump with some you know, some nice coin. And so that was my foray into it. But like for me, like I didn't understand it at first. So the first drop I went for was the Voltron drop, and I was like you, I waited. Actually, I got there late. I think I was there like a minute or two late, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? Because the store says it's sold out, and now they got this marketplace, and you know, then you wait like an extra half an hour, and it's for sale, and like, wow, these prices are ridiculous, right? And so yeah, you get it feels very scammy. But like, you know, fast forward, here we are today, right? And you know, it's part of the digital collecting hobby and era. So D, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, when we were looking into that, well, you got me on to Vivi, but when you were kind of researching, one thing that I remember was like you got down the rabbit hole because of a company called like 33 or something 33.
That I don't remember.
33. Yeah, and I was like, that's okay, whatever. That's kind of weird. But then you were talking about like someone sold a rock for like
the ETH rock she's talking about.
Yeah, and I'm like, what? Someone sold a freaking rock on the internet? That's crazy. So I was like, yeah, these are all scams. I don't think we should.
She did say that. Like, what the hell are you doing buying a picture? You know, I can take a screenshot. We had this screenshot conversation many times.
Yeah.
But fast forward, D's in it as well now.
Yeah, and here we are for almost 4 years later. Yeah, and we're still here, still buying these pictures.
Well, I think now we're kind of in this new thing where it's like, for me, like, because you know, I'm upside down on a few things as well, but like for me, like initially I came in here for the investing portion of it, but like after a year of just doing that, you know, because we were kind of coming down in the tail end of the top, you know, I really enjoyed the networking aspect of this all, because like if we didn't get involved in digital collecting in general, because it's not just Vivi we got involved in, you know, there's all kinds of stuff. There's Cryptoid, McFarlane Toys Digital. You've been in a few other things. There's Candy. So that's kind of what got us into this. But what I really love about all this, Slider, is the networking aspects. Being able to network and meet people like you that have similar, you know, taste in hobby and in like sci-fi picks and stuff like that. Because like talking to my wife about Star Trek for like the past 20 years, not 20 years, I'm sorry, 18 years, it gets to her after a while. So, you know, it's good to have an outlet and talk story with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I do love it though, but yeah,
she does. I married a Trekkie, guys. I married a Trekkie. But the point I'm trying to make is I've really enjoyed the networking aspect of this space. It's allowed us to start this podcast. There's opportunities for us because of what we do right here. We have an audience, we have a community. We started an NFT project, and you know, we're starting other things that, you know, I won't say right now, but we're doing a lot of things. I'm really enjoying this, and what I love the most is the networking aspect. I love doing this. This is my favorite show out of the 5 shows we do. So before we get into any more of the tangents, anyways, so you got into Vivi, you're doing these drops. I remember I used to see you on Twitter Spaces. You actually used to be a Twitter Space host and used to talk with, I believe his name was Chris. Can you guys fill us in a little bit about that and your journey as a content creator?
Yeah, that was all Chris's idea. Paradox Cycle. It took him a while because I wasn't like comfortable doing it, you know. But you know, it was a time of like 2023. I think we started that. And we did it for pretty much almost every weekend of 2023. And we kind of like, the idea was that there wasn't a lot of people talking about like digital comics and like collecting from like a person who's been a physical collector coming in from the digital. And we would just
Love
talk
that.
about that. We would talk about AI, we talk about quantum computing, just all kinds of different stuff, the VR tech, AR tech, that he was really into too. And, we would just kind of geek out for, hours sometimes on the space. And there would only be a couple people. Sometimes there were more, but it was cool. We just talked and we, anybody could come up, and if they had any questions, like we would just go over, different stuff, like, what our, what we're doing, what the strategy is, like, be careful, don't get caught up in too much FOMO, and this was back in the beginning of 2023. So, it was like
Yeah.
we're going into the bear market, but, there was quite a bit of FUD, but, it was just, it was so our main goal was just like to talk like you guys do and just kind of like educate people, about the digital and, coming from the physical, because, he's a big reseller on eBay and stuff, and that's what I started doing like in 2021, is doing that full time. So yeah, just that was kind of what we did.
And I really wanted to bring this up because I don't think a lot of people know that you used to be a content creator. And yes, by doing shows like that, technically you're creating content. And I used to listen a bunch. I'm not a Twitter space type of guy, so I don't really like to go on spaces a lot. I'm more of the YouTube person. So there's only a few Twitter spaces I frequent once in a while, but I really enjoyed your show just to kind of like sit there and just to listen and to digest. And what I want to see more in this space is actual collectors doing content. You know what I mean? The collectors that know the fandoms, they know the comic books, they know the lore. You know, I mean, like, and I think it's important for that, because like if we are in this new world of digital collecting, then we need to make sure that we have actual collectors that are actually giving their their knowledge in this kind of stuff. You got Key Comics in the chat right there. You've got other people like the Mahalos. You've got there's even like the Bones Bees out there that knows this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of collectors out there, and it's just good to see that there's some voices. So I'm glad that you gave us your voice tonight. D, go ahead. Oh, okay, never mind. So Slider, while we're waiting on D, I'm gonna pivot to another question right here that she has, and it's basically, besides Vivi, what other platforms do you collect on? Is there a platform that's your favorite? And do you hold a piece that you really love the most?
Wow. Okay. Well, right now it's pretty much Vivi, that, and it's not kind of by choice, because I was big into HRO. I had probably like 1,500 cards, like complete chapter 1 set, like almost complete chapter 2, like some, just a lot of cards on there. And that kind of, that's done now. I mean, they said it's moving over to Colex and that whole deal, but yeah, that was a big one that went down. And then also Quid. I was on Quid just because they had a lot of Star Trek stuff, and I love Star Trek, and they had tons of posters and cards, and so I collected a lot of stuff on there. I think I had like about 4,000 NFTs, on there.
Damn.
So, and they shut down like within a day. I remember like Chris like messaged me and just said like, "Hey, did you see this yet? Like, Quid's shutting down." And I'm like, "What? No." And I tried logging in. I couldn't even get in. It was like that was that quick that it was just down. And
That sucks.
yeah, so but like that's one of the things we had talked about is like, don't get overextended, just buy what you love, because you never know what's going to happen. So, it was, it sucks. Yeah. But, it's just part of the journey for me. It's like I still, have pictures of those things. And, I met, Chris through that, and, other people. And so, yeah, I mean, it's still fun. Like, so, yeah, but I would say now I'm mostly on Vivi. I'm on Candy too. I have some of the DC, like, bigger Golden Age books that they have on there.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. I just downloaded Fanable, so I'm gonna try to do a little bit on there. I set up for I didn't know I was talking to Comics and Crypto. I was messaging them, and they said like, because I couldn't figure out how you pay for something, because I thought it was like Vivi where it's like you can just load in money or whatever, and I'm like, how do you do this? Because I was like, I KYC'd, And I did all the stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you don't have the KYC." And I'm like, "Okay, well, it's like said that I needed to." But anyways, I did all that, and they showed me. They were like, "Well, it's just like when you actually like purchase it, that's when you pay like you would at like a regular like online store." So
Okay.
I missed the drop yesterday because I was thinking like VV time for drops and stuff, and it was like
Yeah.
it just slipped my it slipped my mind. It was like at 2 o'clock, and like I by the time I got there it was like 2:15, and I checked Twitter and it like had already sold out. So I was like, but yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm on now. Like I still have my Gods Unchained account and all those cards. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Dee's a big card collector. You got anything you want to add to this, Dee?
Yeah, so I actually started I was in the HRO community too, and because it was all the DC stuff, and I love DC. And so I mean I don't know how many cards I have. I'm pretty sure it's not like 1,500, not that much, but I even bought like the sleeves and like a little binder to put them all in. So
Yeah.
I have a little collection for myself, but mainly because like I said, I love DC stuff more than Marvel. What else do I have? I have like Pokemon cards. Nothing from like when I was younger. Like my younger brothers probably have theirs still. And then our kid, she also loves Pokemon, so she when we go to the local comic shop, she always gets like one or two anime books, and then she also gets a pack of Pokemon cards, and she opens those. I record her, and then I put it on her YouTube channel. So
Mhm.
that's what she wants to get more into. But um, yeah, as far as cards, that's basically all I have. Um, Everything else is like collectibles and a whole bunch of comics, which I love. And it's like a family thing. So yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
honestly, Slider, like my wife was not a collector when I first went into Vivi. She was not a collector throughout the years that we were together. She's big in sci-fi. So, Slider, let me rewind. I've said this before, but like when I first met Dee, I never used to go out on Friday nights, and I told her that right off the bat. By the way, I don't go out on Friday nights because of Sci-Fi Friday on Sci-Fi Channel, right?
Yep.
And you had Stargate SG-1, you had Atlantis, and then you had Battlestar Galactica, and sometimes Warehouse 13, right, was in there as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, and so like I told her, hey, I'm a big sci-fi geek, and these are the and also Thursday nights we couldn't go out because of Lost. So, um, so we used to plan our weekends accordingly by the seasons, and so every Friday night during those seasons we would never go out. We would make dinner at home. And we would just park our butts in front of the TV. I'd have the DVR on because after those episodes would play, we would go and rewatch the entire 3 episodes after that. That's how bad I was, and I'd make her rewatch it with us, right? Um, so we'd only go out on Saturdays and Sundays. Our friends always wondered why it was that way, and so, but like we really got close around those shows, specifically Stargate and Battlestar Galactica, and then also I got her into Star Trek. She came around the time when Star Trek was kind of off the air already, right? So she used to watch the reruns with me a lot, and I was big on the reruns, and we'll talk about that too because I want to like ask your favorite episodes and stuff like that though. But so she would never go out, but she was a sci-fi geek because of that. But she never collected comic books or any. I didn't even know she liked card Slider until we got into Vivi, and so fast forward into Vivi. It even took her a while to get into Vivi. I'm like, come on, we can make money off this. That was the original intent, and I've been honest about that. But then over time, that original intent turned into collecting. I was like, okay, we got to go to the comic store now because I want to pair the physical with the digital. And then that reinvigorated me to go back into collecting because I used to collect comic books in the 90s, specifically Image, like Savage Dragon, Wildcats, Young Blood, Shadowhawk, all those guys, right? I
Mhm.
love those. And so,
Yeah.
like, going back into the comic books, I loved it, Slider. So I have about a bunch of long boxes in the not the closet, but in the garage. But behind me, there's about 20 short boxes underneath this TV right here. It never was like that before until we got into Vivi, and half of those aren't even mine. They're D's. In fact, D takes up a lot of the space, to be very quite honest. And then also my daughter. Like D has a collection of Superman and Batman that I'm not allowed to touch. That she
And
was
Wonder
able to
Woman.
like acquire from Vivi Knight
Oh yeah,
before his
BB Knight.
passing. Rest in love to
Yeah,
Vivi Knight. So big
those
collectors
are
because of
special.
Vivi. They're
Yeah.
very special. We used to have reads where we used to read with our daughter. And so Vivi kind of got our daughter into reading anime because of the comic books, because we used to read as a family. And so now my daughter's into anime. She constantly likes to read. And what's so funny, Slider, is when I asked her, we can get these books digitally, and because we're in digital, right? She's like, no, Dad, I gotta have the physical. I gotta have the physical. So I had to buy her a bookshelf where she has all of her anime on. They're all categorized because my wife is that kind of person. And it's all collected, it's all into baggies and stuff like that. So doing this has gotten us back into collecting, and I love it. Long story short.
No, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's great when you can do it, as a family, and everybody loves it. And then, you know, as a kid, it's just, I remember, like I said, when I was a kid and like collecting and, just the whole thing, just it teaches you kind of like taking care of your stuff and, kind of like looking towards the future. And, it's good for you, but it also, teaches good lessons, when you're a kid. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the best part, though, Slider, she loves to read. Like, if I take away the devices, usually kids will be like, "Oh, I gotta read." Like, no, she'll grab a book and she'll just bury herself in a book, and I love that. You know what I mean? There's the analog and digital all in one. So, but D, I'm gonna let you ask some questions.
Yeah, and talking about doing this like hobby with the family. I know you told us, and maybe you can tell the people who are watching in case they didn't catch it the first time that you mentioned it. But collecting as well for you kind of started too when you were younger, right? With your family. Is that something you can touch on as well?
Yeah, when I was as far back as I can remember, really, like my dad collected, I guess he collected when he was a kid, comic books and like in the golden age, because he remembers having like a Superman one, and that he traded for, like, he told me the story, like he traded like 7 different books just to get the Superman one. And he said like a couple hundred books that he had, and he started when he was probably like 10 or 11, he said, and then when he went off to the military, he had put them all away up in the attic, like in a trunk. And then when he had come home from the military, they were gone. Like his parents had done like spring cleaning or whatever and gave them away. So, I remember that story from being young, but he didn't collect comic books or anything like that. When I was younger, he was more into the coins and stamps and that kind of, the, basically that kind of stuff, and then my mom, she was into like, all the kinds of stuff you would see like at antique shops, like porcelain, Japanese porcelain plates and tea sets with like certain patterns on them, and porcelain clowns, like salt shakers, like sterling silver, knife sets, dinner sets. So basically I grew up into that. And the one memory like I do remember clearly, like when I really started getting into collecting, because the coins and everything was cool, but it didn't get me like that. That wasn't what got me in. It was, I was into sports, and I was playing t-ball and all this stuff. And I remember one
Nice.
Christmas, yeah, I remember one Christmas that I was like 7 or 8, and I was opening all my different presents and stuff like that. And my dad like pushed to me like a weird shaped present that was like kind of like a triangle shape, and I'm like, what is this? So I remember like ripping it open, and it was like a white binder, and had like a baseball guy on there with a mitt and a bat. And it was for my brother. And now my older brother is like 22 years older than me. So yeah, so I like I didn't really see him too much because he was like already out of college, like, and had a family. And like my parents had moved down from like New England area to Florida when I was like 5. So it meant something, and he had got my brother into collecting. So my brother had a really great like baseball card collection at that time. But I just remember like opening that binder, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then the next couple things he pushed towards me was like a complete set of like tops 89 and like tops. It's like 89 tops and like 88 Fleer or Don Russ. So they're like complete sets in the little like white long boxes. And then there were some like free packs, like some tops, Don Russ, Fleer, like Score, and I just remember like opening those up and, then like putting them in the binder, like all the players, that I liked, I'd like, categorize them by like team or player or, I'd be searching for the players I knew that I saw on TV. So that really started it off. And then kind of like trading cards has always been my what I mainly collect, but like I definitely collected comic books, and then it just went on from there. Kind of like got some action figures and, just that was basically the start.
What was like the first like comic books you collected? Were you like a Marvel, DC fan? Was there a specific hero that you liked the most? Were you someone that liked to collect the covers, or are you more into the run?
Yeah, no, that's interesting because like my dad, like I said, he was into like DC, so Superman, Batman, so he's the one that kind of got me into the comics. And
Let's go.
yeah, he would get me like, I would get like, I remember like Batman and Robin, like was a comic that was like in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I got some of those. And then, of course, like Superman, I had a whole bunch of the Supermans. I remember when the death of Superman happened, I still have that comic book, the big
Me
thick
too.
one. I got that one
Is it in
still.
the bag? Do you still have it in the poly bag?
No, I don't. No, I have that one. I don't have in the poly bag, but I have like the big thick one that was like the graphic novel one.
Oh, gotcha.
Wow.
That they released. Yeah, I have that one still in like good condition. And then yeah, so I had a whole bunch of those Superman comic books around that event too. Because
the
they had
Funeral of Friends as well. The whole Funeral of Friends.
yeah, I've got all the Funeral of Friends. I remember
Same
like
here,
having to get them all. And then afterwards there was like ones with like Superman where he was like half machine.
Yep.
He was like, yeah, like all those. Yeah, so I had those. But honestly, like my favorite character, probably I would say Superman for DC, but I was really kind of drawn towards Thor for Marvel. And everybody would always be like, oh, who's your favorite superhero, this and that. And I'd be like, Thor. And they'd be like, who? Thor? Who's that guy? And I mean, because nobody really knew him until he came out in the Avengers movies and stuff. But I just loved him because it was like the history, like the mythology, like, a Norse god and all that kind of stuff. And he had this crazy hammer that has lightning and he can fly. And, that's who I was drawn towards. So I have a whole bunch of Thor comic books from, like the late 80s, all through the 90s. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, for me, a big DC fan. We're a DC family here. Same thing. So like one of my first comic books was a Batman comic book for my grandpa, which kind of like was the gateway to get into DC. And then like Superman, love the movies. I love the fact we're going to get a new Superman movie. And I know that a lot of the Zack Snyder fans are not happy with how it looks. Very colorful. Why is Superman in pain? But like that's like literally ripped out of a comic book from back in the day. And so like I really like where they're going with this kind of stuff. Now if it comes from Marvel, I was more into the X-Men. Instead of like a specific character, the X-Men itself as a whole, with all these different characters, they're all flawed in their own way. I really resonated with the X-Men a lot. But what about you, D?
DC all the way. Wonder Woman has always been my first love, my first and favorite out of the DC, just because she's so beautiful. She's a badass, and I always loved watching her show when I was younger. And as far as like Marvel, yeah, it would be Storm or Jubilee. I mean, Storm is just, she's so fire too, man. All her powers and just the stuff that she can do. And Jubilee would like go pew 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 pew. Yeah. So those are like
firecracker fingers.
Yeah. So those are the ones I resonate with. Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I got a side note. So like my favorite female superhero is Supergirl, actually. I really like her backstory, and I love the newer version of Supergirl. And that storyline itself is like one of my favorite books that I have in my PC. That's another question I have for you. What is your favorite book in your PC?
Wow, yeah. We kind of touched on it. I would say probably, I would say I have two, but my real favorite is probably the Death of Superman one. Just because
Oh,
I just remember all around that. You know, like the hype around it and it being on the TV. They were talking about Superman dies and you know, just like trying to find the books and you know, that's one of the only thing that I collected with like kind of like a run type deal or like a mini series because I'm not a big like run collector for me personally. Like
yeah.
it's just not that I'm like I'm more into the covers and you know, or if it's a really good story, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I would say that was probably the that's probably my favorite because of just what's all around it. But like a good book that I have that I do like. It's you know a better one is I have the first appearance of Mr. Freeze from back in like I think the comic book's like it's like 273 or something. I can't remember, but it's like from 1963 or something. So I do have that one raw, and you know it's decent quality, like maybe like a 5. I haven't got to grade it. I don't actually don't grade that much stuff either. Like unless I'm gonna sell it, I'm fine with just having stuff raw. So
Yeah, no, no.
Yeah, that's
I think for myself, like I recently only started collecting encapsulated books, like when I got back into the hobby. But everything that I own as well is raw. And then like before though, back in the 80s, 90s, we never really had bags and boards. Like I started bagging and boarding my books like around the Image era when Image first came out. Um, we didn't really have a lot of comic book shops here, so like our local 7-Eleven, we had a spin rack. I used to buy all my Spawn comics there. All
okay.
what do they call that? Uh I forget what they're called already. You know with the barcode, I have a brain fart right now.
Yeah,
Um
newsstand.
Newsstand, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
newsstand. And I remember back then, like you were the cheap ass when you bought a newsstand, right? Instead of
Yeah.
something from the actual comic store where you ordered it in from the direct edition. So we had the 7-Eleven, we had our supermarket where it was the mix between like the Playboys. Yeah, that's when Playboys were
Yeah.
actually on the actual rack at the very top,
Yeah.
along with guns and ammo and everything else. And then you had your section of Marvel and DC next to it. You had the Spider-Man 2099s and all that stuff. But we had this comic shop, our LCS, and this was like our sanctum. We used to go there and hang out. There was like one little video game console in there that had like Fester's Quest and Street Fighter and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I used to get my pre-orders from my Image books. And I ordered, like, I have everything. I've got Wildcats, the run all the way from 1 through, I think I stopped at 10 on that one. I got Shadowhawk 1 through 10. I've got the majority of all my Savage Dragons, like one of my favorite characters from Image. I got the Max, Supreme, even Brigade. I mean, I can't stand Brigade, but I have all that too. Yeah, Brigade sucked. I'm sorry. How many operational groups have to all be the same? You had Brigade, Cyberforce, Youngblood. I couldn't
Yeah.
tell the difference between all of them in the very end. So,
I never heard of Brigade.
yeah, exactly. Not a lot of people
Right.
heard of Brigade.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, we
okay,
don't
okay.
talk about Brigade, But yeah, no, it was an awesome time to be a collector back then. But like at school, you couldn't, at least in Hawaii, you couldn't talk about comic books. You used to get teased a lot, especially from the Hawaiian, t-ball players or football players back in
Yeah.
the day. You used to get beaten up as a Hawaiian if they found out that you were a geek. So I used to hide at my local comic shop, and
Mm.
not a lot of people knew I collected comics in school because it wasn't cool. And that's why now with like this construct, the VV verse, as well as like having this community of collectors, I resonate a lot here, and it brings back a lot of like that nostalgia respark, as Chris likes to always say. I don't know. Did you
Yeah.
kind of live a similar life growing up in the 90s?
Yeah, I would say very similar to what you said. Like almost the same. Because where I was at, it was like it was a smaller town. You know, there was bigger towns like around and like Tampa, Orlando are about an hour from me. So we're like kind of out in I would say like semi-rural. So there was no comic book shop in my town at all. Like the nearest one was like about 25 minutes away, like in the next town. And the places where I got comic books was the flea market. They had a pretty good sized flea market that like had a lot of older
You
stuff.
got the
Though.
deals.
Yeah, so a lot of the older guys would be there, and they'd have like really older books though, so there wasn't really anything new. But the only place that I could get the new stuff back then was the local supermarket. Like I remember because it had one of those. It had the spinny rack for. Well, I think that came in later when I
The
first
spinny
went.
rack.
Yeah, when I first went there, it was like the big like shelf, like you're talking about, where it's got like the
Like
ones
a
on the top,
bookshelf.
yeah, on the bottom, and it's got all the magazines, mixed in. And I remember it was like Marvel, DC were on the bottom, like on the floor, basically, right hand side. And I remember every time we would go shopping,
By the
I would,
dirt.
yes, I would like run over there and I would like sit on the floor and like could go through the books and stuff. My mom would be like, "Get off the floor, it's all dirty." And then like they'd be like, "We have to go shopping," So we went shopping, did all the shopping, and then when they were checking out, like the rack was like right in the front, so I would go sit down there and then try to con my dad into getting me some comic books before they finally checked out. I would like be walking up with the book. I'm like, "Hey, yeah, what about this one? You guys haven't checked out yet. Can I get it?" And sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. But like that's what I remember. So for me too, it wasn't like there wasn't an LCS. I mean, like when I was in high school now and I could drive, then I would go to the town over, which had an LCS where people would play like Magic cards, and they had like a Nintendo. I think maybe it was a Super Nintendo at that point, like set up in the back. And the guy had tons of comic books all throughout the shop, and he had a lot of cards too. And yeah, I would just go there with my cousin and we would just hang out all the time. But yeah, I would say like how you said, like, I would say like for me, it was kind of like a closet comic book collector, like in sci-fi too, because I was kind of like on the other side. Cause like in high school, I was like more the jock. So, like I didn't get beat up because I was, I'm like 6'4", like 200 and something 25 pounds. So like,
You're
they
like,
weren't, yeah, but, but they did, but those friends, they didn't want to talk about that. They were like, "Oh, that's stupid. That's nerdy. Like you're like, that's
yeah.
why, So, but I would talk with like, the so-called nerds and stuff, and that was interesting because I remember like going over and they were like, "What are you doing?" Like, cause one of them had a comic book one day, I remember, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cool, comic book." And, I started talking to him. He's like, "Oh, what do you know about comic books?" And then I started talking about comic books, and then we went into like sci-fi and Star Trek, and he's like grilling me about Star Trek. He's like, "Oh yeah, then what's the number on the Enterprise? What, do you know?" And I'm like, "NCC 1701. I'm like, "Do you want A, B, C, D?"
Which one we talking about?
Yeah,
Which
right.
era?
Yeah.
You
So
probably
yeah,
blew their mind, like, whoa.
Yeah. We talking about the
yeah.
Rick Berman era? Which one you want? Which one you want?
Right? Yeah. Then they asked me about the captains. Who's the captain? I still remember vividly because it was an interesting time back then for me too. Because like I said, I was coming at it from like the other side of it.
Yeah. That's cool
Yeah.
because I did not come from the other side of it.
Mhm.
I was literally on the geekdom side, and that's okay. But I want to kind of fast forward. So like I collected during like my intermediate to like elementary era, and so I used to actually mow yards to get money. I used to live in an apartment complex, so I used to knock on people's doors and offer to wash their dishes, like anything and everything just to get money because I lived in a very poor family. So I'd make $3 here, $5 here just so I could buy my comic books. I was a very, very opportunistic kid. Whenever my mom gave me lunch money or lunch, I would try to sell my lunch at school to get money to like buy my comic books. I'm no joke. I like
Yeah.
when I used to go to my friend's house, his mom was like very well off. She was an attorney, so she used to like let us raid her pantry. I used to like grab corn nuts and anything. And my friend
Right.
didn't care because he was a rich guy, right? Or I mean, he lived very well off. And
Yeah.
so I used to sell all that just to make just like quarters or whatever to buy my comic books. Now fast forward. Also, our LCS wasn't really an LCS; it was a video store. It was called Specialty Videos. So you'd have your VHS on one side, you had like the console in the middle, you had like a little glass case desk, and then a big fat tube TV above there on like that big shelf that had like the buckle around it to strap it to the shelf.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember how my stepmother was an alien with Kim Basinger was playing one day when we were in there, and I bought a comic book. But that's pretty much how our comic book store was. We didn't have a lot of shelves. There was one spin rack and two shelves right next to the rated X side of the video store, right? That you're really not supposed to go, but they put the comic books right there. So hey, whatever. Yeah. So but I remember trying to like just get any kind of spare change possible so I could like buy my comic books, because my parents weren't buying me comic books. It was tough to get anything out of them because they were poor, and I get it. Now fast forward, like when I went to high school, that's when I just like, okay, no more comic books, no more nothing. I suppressed the hobby because it wasn't cool for comic books in high school. Girls did not like comic heads in high school. So I kind of did away with that and reinvented myself when I became a freshman, because you know you go through that kind of stuff during the freshman, right? And I became kind of like everyone's friend. It doesn't matter if you were a like a jock, a nerd, a drama kid, or a motorhead. I would try to like put myself in everyone else, be friends with everybody, and majority of people knew me as like the computer guy. So I was in a computer aide for 4 years straight in high school. By my fourth year, when I was a senior, on Wednesdays, the computer teacher would never come in, and I would run the class during certain periods. He would give the keys to certain aides. And so for my elective, I chose computer aide twice on a Wednesday, specifically because I wanted to run a racket during recess. And so we weren't allowed to do magic cards in school because I forget why. They just didn't want us playing that type of game there. And I wasn't into the stuff, but I was into the geekdom, and I used to talk with those guys a lot. So I used to let the magic kids play in the computer lab during the second recess, which is about a half an hour long. But they had to give me something to get through the doors. So like they had to give me like, you know, a soda, a cup of noodle, something. You had to like barter with me to get through the doors. And man, I used to come home with all kinds of stuff. And you bet your butt, you know what I used to do with that, right? I used to sell it so I'd have gas money to put in my car, right? So that's kind of what I did for the Magic people. But I remember Doom. We used to have like Doom tournaments, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
so like yeah, and so between the Macs and the PCs and stuff like that, I ran this racket for like an entire year in the senior my senior year. And you know, I knew when the computer aide would come in, or the computer teacher, so I would just work it around his schedule. And I think once I got busted and I said, hey, you know, we're just you know, playing magic cards this one time, but that was it. And I did that for a whole entire year, man. And I loved it because at least I provided a safe space for you know, the geeks. And trust me, I'm a geek as well, but at the same time, you know, I had a little something in the end. So
Yeah, right now, I mean, hey, I mean, it worked out for everybody. They got to play Magic, and you know, you got
yeah,
a little bit of extra money. So hey, yeah.
I mean that's kind of how I did it. But like it was a way for, at least, you know, it was kind of like, yeah, I'll scratch your back, you do mine, kind of a thing. And pause. Anyways, D, anything you want to add?
Yeah, talking about collecting, like for me, I didn't collect any comic books or like you know, action figurines and stuff when I was younger. It was my brother. So he had all the cool comic books and all the Batman, because he was such a huge Batman guy. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, all the DC stuff. He had all like the, I don't even remember, like all the, probably all the Marvel books. And um yeah, so I never got to like collect those, and my mom wouldn't even buy them for me because they weren't like for girls kind of thing. You know, growing up, it was just my brother and I, so that was more of like, you know, a boy thing. I mean, she didn't even buy me Barbies, which is fine, but like I wanted, you know, what my brother had. So when he wasn't at home, I used to go in his shoebox and I would get his things and play with them. And I mean, he would figure it out because I wouldn't put him back like exactly how he had them. So he figured out that, you know, yes, my sister went and played with my stuff. So when we got into, yeah, Vivi, it was like, oh my gosh, I can collect these like comic books that I never got to collect before. And you know, there's these DC collectibles on the app. Like I can actually have my own Wonder Woman. I mean, I don't have it physically, but at least I have it digitally. Um, and then after that, we started going to the comic book shop, and yeah, now we have physicals. And yes, now I do have Wonder Woman figures. I have Funkos of Wonder Woman. So it's what I wasn't able to do then, I'm able to do now, which is it's fun, and to be able to have a community that is in the same boat as us, and we can all geek out together and kind of like have that nostalgia respark within the community is really cool, I think. What do you
Yeah,
guys
Yeah,
think?
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
and
Yeah.
speaking of the comic shop, there he is right there. He's got a question for you, Slider. I think it's related to the death of Superman. He's asking if it's still in the poly bag. I think I asked that question, unless it's a different book you're talking about, Key.
Yeah, mine's not in the poly bag anymore. That one, like I said, like the
The
graphic
black
novel
bag.
one. Yeah, the graphic novel one didn't come in a poly bag. I don't think, at least not when I got it. Like I think I got it like off the shelf, like at that supermarket. So I just got it the way it came. Like that was the thing back then. It was like you took what they had. I mean,
Yeah.
there wasn't that many options back then. So I just whatever they had there, and of course, they didn't have that big of a selection. Maybe they had like 15 books. Like that little section, on the floor. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I remember that run. I remember the funeral for a friend. I believe I have it all. It starts with like Justice League, and I think it ends with is it Supergirl of Tomorrow?
yeah,
Where she's
I think
holding up the
so.
car.
Yeah.
But I remember the first one you saw for Funeral of a Friends, and I just remember Guy Gardner with his head down, right, with his rice bowl haircut on the
Mhm.
on the cover and stuff like that, and they're all mourning his death. But yeah, I remember that was a big thing too when that book came out. And there's a bunch of books of that book out as well. But I
Yeah, there was.
have
I
go
was
ahead,
gonna say,
sorry.
I remember that cover. Like, I remember a couple of the, like the one where they're all standing around the grave or the casket when it's going in, and then there
Yeah.
was one with him and his father, like in the field, was like part of that book. It was one of the covers and stuff too. So yeah,
Oh, I got goosebumps, man. That's exactly it right there. But okay, before we pivot to the next thing, and how are you doing on time, Slider? I know it's getting late for you. I don't want to keep you too long. How are you doing on time, my friend?
yeah, we're good. I'd probably go over another 30 minutes or so.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, guys, before we move on to the sci-fi portion of this, and I can't wait to talk about this, for a chance to win a random digital collectible that was donated from a community member, type in hashtag engage for a community sponsored giveaway for someone that donated in our last live stream right here. And we will let you know what we're going to be giving away at the end of the show. So you're going to have to stick around. And it's two collectibles. We're going to give away two things to you guys as well. And oh, yeah, wrong button. Sorry about that. And then back to our regular scheduled program right here. So, Slider, I want to talk to you about 90s era. Oh, oops. 90s era sci-fi, specifically the early 90s, my friend. And let me pull this up for everyone to see. So I think you recognize this list right here. This is all of the sci-fi shows that we all grew up with in the early 90s, from the Babylon 5s to your name right there, my friend, Slider right here. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, I'm pretty sure this whole entire list is very familiar to you. Like, which show resonated with you the most? Now, I'm a big Trekkie, so like obviously all the Star Treks are in their own like category, but like we had so much good shows, and can you honestly say that the shows are any good like how they were back in the early 90s? Like I don't think anyone's been able to duplicate like the epic stories of Babylon 5 or the wackiness of Farscape, or even like just like the just kind of like the creativity of what Quantum Leap was, right? Like all these shows were just so well done for the time that they were in.
No, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, man. I wish they did stuff like that now. I mean, that's why I was excited about Picard when that came out,
Yes.
and then also Dark Mirror. I like that, that's a good one, because I was big into the Outer Limits too, and like Twilight Zone. I love those, but I would say probably the number one has to be Star Trek, the Next Generation. Like
Yes.
just because, like, what, where I told you I kind of like lived like more rural, so we didn't even have cable where I was until I was probably like 12 years old. So we didn't have internet, until around that time, and we didn't have cable. So pretty much everything I had was just what was on regular TV, that you could get, which was like, I don't know, 13 channels or something. So like a lot of the stuff I would watch because like my other brother, who's like 8 years older than me, he would like stay up late when they'd have like reruns and stuff, or if it was on, I can't remember, but he would like record it like on VHS, like off the TV. And then, I would watch them like on the weekend. So I watched so many of the episodes over and over and over and over and over again because there wasn't anything else to watch on TV because like it was very limited. So Star Trek was one of the big ones that we had a whole bunch of VHS tapes that he taped. And so like a lot of the first kind of Star Trek stuff, I watched it like kind of out of order. Like I didn't watch it in order for years later, like when it was like when I like it started kind of like streaming, like because it was in syndication, so they didn't run them in order.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so that was probably the biggest one at that time. And then when I got older, like as a teenager, like I really liked sliders. Like I just love that concept of like you know going to different worlds that are it's the same, it's a different dimension. They basically time slip into different you know dimensions, but it's like the earth, but it could be different because say the Nazis, which is an episode, they won the Second World War, so it was kind of like, whoa, okay. So it made you think because there's some episodes where it's like there's no humans, like there's still dinosaurs, and then there's other like different species you find out later, like aliens that learned how they have this technology too. So that was just really awesome at the time, so
You
there
know,
was a lot of those shows like
you
that.
know what episode that really stuck out to me for Sliders? It was the one where men were like the second rate humans on Earth and women were the dominant. You know what I mean, right? Because
Oh
usually,
yeah.
like, it's, yeah, if you remember that one, and I think
Yeah.
Arturo was running for mayor, I think, in that episode. But yeah, yeah. Anyways,
Hmm.
yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of like, like trying to get home, but what if you like the first episode was like a gut wrencher for me because it's like, no, you made it home, but because they put oil on the gate that usually squeaked, you
It didn't
you know,
squeak.
you know what I
But
Yeah.
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Um
was a great episode.
Home.
yeah, I enjoyed it until they got kind of very crazy in like the third, fourth. I think it's the third or fourth where they went to the Cro-Mags. But let's
Yeah.
talk about Star Trek. Let's get back into the
Yeah.
Star Trek right here. As you can see, Slider, on the very top right of your screen, there is the Enterprise, right? And so that is still the same. That's also the collectible that we have in the app. I hated this Enterprise. It was like my least favorite Enterprise. I used to call it the fat one. That's why when I
Mhm.
heard them say the fat one on Star Trek Picard for reference, like I got giddy. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I used to call that thing, the fat one. I hated this ship, and here the reason why is because I was a big fan of Kirk and the the Connie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the way the Connie looked like versus the Galaxy class. But the one thing about the Galaxy class and TNG, because I lived in the same type of situation as you, is I live in a small town. We had like 5 channels, and so I used to watch TNG on syndication as well. In fact, I think TNG ran on syndication. That was its bread and butter, and I watched it out of order as well. I never watched Encounter to Farpoint the first time. In fact, I don't even remember which one I watched, but see, Star Trek TNG was on at 8 o'clock at night for me, and that was my bedtime. And so
Yeah.
what I used to do is I used to go to bed at 7:45, and I used to shut off all the lights, and I gave myself 15 minutes. And now I couldn't lock my door because I got busted once, but
Mm.
I had a small TV that was like a radio FM radio TV. It was black and white, and I could just hide it under the covers and leave it plugged in, and I could tune it to PBS. And at 8 o'clock, they play Star Trek. And so I used to always watch these episodes when I was supposed to be sleeping with my headphones on under the covers. And I only got busted once. But I remember I used to watch all those episodes. And one of the episodes that kind of always stuck to me, and what was it called? Oh, it's the one with what's his name? Jellicoe. Chain of Command. That's what it is. Chain of Command.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
one where with the 4 lights, where Picard he goes under
Uh,
he goes undercover with the Cardassians, and
Yeah.
Jellicoe is like the most asshole captain ever. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember that, you know, 4 lights, right? But you know,
Yep.
episodes like that, man, like that really stuck with me. That's the next question. What's your favorite Star Trek episode of TNG?
Oh man, there's so many good ones. The two that come to mind is probably was it season 3 when Picard gets, you know, taken by the Borg, you know, and then
Best of both worlds.
yes, best of both worlds, you know, and then you know he becomes Locutus, and then you know he destroys you know so many of the Federation ships and everything, and you know Riker takes over the Enterprise, and you know it was just like that season was, it was kind of like, oh man, you know, because like
Cliffhanger.
yeah, but yeah, it was a 2-parter, so it started the next season, and you know I remember watching that, like I think I only saw the 1 episode, and then it didn't come back on for like a year later or something. So
Yeah.
I didn't know what happened with it. I mean, because I figured he made it back to being a human, because I'd see like a season 5 episode or something at that time, and he was in it, and I'm like, okay, well, he must have, you know, made it, but you don't know what happened. So yeah, that was probably one of my favorites. The other one I would say is it's when which one? I think it's like Yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh,
It's
that was in
where,
season 3 as well. Yes,
yeah,
that's the one where the Enterprise C comes out of the rift.
yeah, and it's like Tasha Yar's on there, and
Yes.
yeah, they're trying to figure out like what's going on with that, and it's like there's 2 Enterprises, but like they're, you know, like in this universe, they're getting beat by the, what is it, the Klingons or the Romulans? I can't remember. I think it's one of them, but they're losing the war.
Klingons.
Yeah, the Klingons. So they're losing the war, yeah, because they didn't make the treaty, and it was, you know, the station that the Enterprise in the real timeline protected, but in this one they didn't or whatever, and that was like the whole thing. But it was just such a cool, I love those ones that like had like something to do with like time, you know, wormholes, like where they would get
Yeah.
like pushed to the end of the universe was one of them, I think, you know, with Q, you know, he was always in there doing some crazy stuff. So yeah, it was just, I mean, all the episodes were pretty good for the most part. I mean, they all had something in them. That's why I like Star Trek, because you know
Yes.
they kind of like,
It was meaningful.
yeah, they taught you about stuff, but also, you know, it was like a future where, you know, you're exploring. You're trying to, you
Yes.
know, better yourself,
You're not blowing
humanity.
shit up. You're exploring.
Yeah, and it's like you try to like have dialogue. You try diplomacy. You know, you're trying to like do these kind of things, and you know, your last option is war. It's not like the first thing you go to. And you hear the dialogue between them, because of course Worf, he always wants to blow stuff up. You know, he's always like, let's go, just fire, you know. And then you got, you know, Picard, who's, you know, always calm, cool, collected, you know, always thinking, you know, what's going to happen if I do this. And, you know, you got all the different personalities. That, I think that's what really made the show. Honestly, out of everything, it was the cast and the crew,
Yes.
and the, you know, the synergy between them all. That's really what made that the show. And I think that's what makes most good sci-fi shows, is when you have great dialogue and you have great interactions between the cast. Like, you know, and I think that's what's lacking. Like you said, like sci-fi shows now, I don't think they have that
Yeah.
really anymore. Like
They're trying to meet quota.
yeah, and they're trying to put everything on the special effects. You know, like it's so heavy special effects, and back then it was about storytelling. Now it's all
Yes.
about CGI, special effects, and you know, and just like putting out these episodes where it's like, oh well, you know, we're gonna do some crazy cliffhanger, but everything leading up to that's not really that great. You know, like I like you said, Lost. I've watched
Yeah.
Lost a couple times. I loved Lost. Like that was an awesome show, and
Yes.
you know that was strung out the storyline for the whole 7 seasons. 7 seasons. I think it was, right. But either way, it was strung out through the whole thing. You know, and they built upon each thing, and Star Trek kind of did that too. But you know, they were contained episodes, but you still had that interaction with the crew, and just the mini storylines that went on between them all. So yeah.
No, I enjoy that, and I love that reference, and I like to bring Lost as a good reference for like other shows like Severance. I love the shows where you have the mystery, but you build on the characters, but you add the mythology as kind of like the background baseline for the entire story. Like in Lost, a good example, you had the island. What the heck was it? You have all the smoke monster. You have these characters. You have the others. Who are they? Right? You get some
Yeah.
of the answers, but in reality the show was never about the mythology. The mythology was the background. The show was about the people. Same with Battlestar Galactica. And you know what? You make a very good point because I used to watch old interviews of the TNG cast. They all worked because they became a family behind the scenes in the backstage, and they're still a family till this day. The same thing happened with Lost. And by the way, my friend I was almost going to say his name. My friend was a grip on Lost, so I actually got to go to a wrap party for season 2, and I met the whole cast. Terry
Oh, that's
O'Quinn was my
cool.
favorite. Was the favorite guy out of all of them. He was nice. He hung out with me the most. Yeah, and he was just a really down to earth guy. Locke, the bald guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
Really down to earth guy. I met all these guys. A lot of them kind of like did some very questionable things, and I'll just leave it at that.
Mm.
But it was a fun experience. But to kind of come back to the 90s here, Star Trek, I completely agree. Like for me, like Star Trek kind of made me the person that I am because I always believed that we could have a better future, right? A future where diplomacy came before fighting. I grew up in an environment where fighting came first before talking things out. It's fists before using your brains, right? And so I love that dynamic, living in an environment where everything was like punch first, ask questions later, kind of a thing. And so that really helped balance me. Now let's get back to the Enterprise, right? Like, so we have that fat one. I used to call it the fat one,
Yeah.
and you guys already know I'm like Slider. We used to watch this out of order, and that kind of like I really feel like Star Trek really honed on like the people that we are now and kind of made us a better person today, or at least for me. And so fast forward now, right? You had like TNG, they ended with All Good Things. That's my favorite episode out of all of them. All Good Things. I think it was superbly done with the three enterprises and the time jumping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then they went into the movie Slider and they ruined it for me because like to me, like Generations was okay, but I did not like how Kirk died. And then First Contact to me was the best TNG movie out of all of them. I enjoyed First Contact. I loved Jonathan Frakes as a director. I love the score from Jerry Goldsmith. I believe it's Jerry Goldsmith. And I love the new Enterprise. Enterprise E was just like, this is the perfect Enterprise because it reminds me of the Connie, right? And so,
Yeah.
but like, then the movies ended on such a dud with Nemesis, battling his clone and
Yeah.
Data dying. And I'm like, this is it? We get to see the rebuild of the Enterprise E and we never know what happened. And then Picard came along, and seasons 1 and 2, I'm sorry, just did not hit for me. I love the Rick Berman era. Out of all the eras in Star Trek, the Rick Berman era was my favorite. And so, what does that mean for people that don't know what that means? That's like the TNG era. That's the Deep Space Nine era. And yes, DDS is right. The best of both worlds set up DS9 and Cisco, right? Shout out to Captain Cisco. That is the biggest bro's favorite captain right there. But all those shows came out. Voyager came out during the Rick Berman era, even Enterprise, right? And so when the Rick Berman era ended, I was bummed. Now let's fast forward to now. There came what is that? The Paramount Plus network, which was actually CBS All Access. Discovery came out, and I was all for it. And I watched it, and I'm like, this is terrible. Nothing looks
Yeah.
the same. They're not on canon, but yet they're supposed to be on canon. Why does everything look way more futuristic than TOS era? And so they kind of got it all wrong. It goes exactly what you were saying. They were going on special effects and like, big explosions over the actual cast, the dialogue, like you focus
Yeah.
on the actual freaking characters, right? And then over time, I think season 2 was the best season out of all of Discovery. I think Discovery sucks. No offense on anyone who likes Discovery. I did not like it. Now, we had all these other series that kind of blew. But then when you got to Picard season 3 and they brought the whole cast back, and Patrick Stewart didn't want any of this, by the way. He wanted his own show with none of the actual TNG guys. What really brought the TNG guys in was who's the guy that did 12 Monkeys D? Anyways, the executive
Matalis.
Yes, Terry Matalas.
Yeah.
So if for people who don't know who Terry Matalas is, he's the guy that did 12 Monkeys, the TV series, and he also did MacGyver, the TV series. And he's a big Trekkie fan, and he was actually like some kind of worker. He worked on the TNG set. He was able to convince the network to let him front run the third season, because I think the third season was the second and first was run by Akiva Goldsmith, and he just did a really terrible job. They wanted to get very seminal and very philosophical with Star Trek, and it just didn't land. You know, people wanted to see familiarity. They wanted to go back to a certain era. At least Trekkies like us, right? They wanted to go back to the Rick Berman era. And Terry Matalas brought that back. In season 3, we got the Rick Berman era back. I mean, like I felt like an old friend returned, right? When I watched, I don't know if you've seen it, Slider, but I'm a
Oh
big
yeah.
proponent on Picard season 3. When I watched that first episode, man, like I just got goosebumps, because I was just like, man, this reminds me of like the old, you know what I mean? This reminds me of like how things used to be. And so I was all for that. And then every episode hit the mark. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think it would work, Slider. Old TNG cast, you know, grandmas and grandpas coming back to like mount up one last time. I
Yeah.
didn't think it was gonna fly, man. But it flew. And that's because Terry Matalas is a big Star Trek fan. And that's who you need to make your fandoms, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, anything out there. We know that from like X-Men 97. It was done really well because a fan made it. You need fans to make this stuff. The newer people now, they're not making it. They're making it because of quotas. So it was just done so superbly that, to me, Slider, that is the best Trek I've seen since the Rick Berman era ended. That entire season from beginning to end, you know, the Titan, you know, that was like off of the old Titan, right off the Luna class, that became like the Neo Constitution, that later on becomes the Enterprise. I was in love with it all, man. I dug it. It was the Shangri-La model. This is how embedded I am in Star Trek. I knew exactly the ship he modeled off of, which is the Shangri-La. Anyways, go ahead, Slider.
No, man, definitely. I kind of had the same feeling, like, because I had watched Picard, you know, and I watched Discovery, and I was kind of the same way. I mean, it was Trek, so I was gonna watch it, you know, just because I needed some more Trek. But
Yes.
yeah, you know, so I watched it. But then Picard, it was like season 1. I was like, okay, you know, like, you know, they had the Borg cube was in there, and I was like, okay, yeah, so they're doing something with that. So it kind of, I was like, it was better than Discovery. So yeah, but the third season, that really hit home. I mean, that was awesome. Like they definitely brought back that feel. You know,
Yes.
they even made the set look more like, you know, how it was.
How
Like,
it
because
should look like, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and they brought back the same designer too to do that. You know, because I was watching a YouTube with Will Wheaton. You know,
Michael
and
Okuda. Michael Okuda.
yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah, and they were showing like how they did it and how they brought back. You know, they had to use like old school like lighting, you know, to get the feel for it because of how they had it back way back in the 80s, and you know, to get that yellow glow to it and stuff, you know, that dull yellow. And you know, they brought it back. They really put a lot of time in to that part, and I think like what you said, that really gave it that feel, you know. And yeah, it was great, and the storytelling was good, you know. It was
So
just,
good.
yeah, it was really good. So, you know, and then Dr. Crusher, I mean, that was kind of different, you know. She was like, whoa, what's going on here, you know. They really changed her character, but it was cool. It worked though, you know.
You know, the one character I loved the most was Liam Shaw, Captain Shaw. I became a fan of Captain
Yeah.
Shaw right off the bat. And if you guys are a big fan of like 12 Monkeys, he's actually Deacon from 12 Monkeys. So Terry Matalas used a lot of the old actors from his older films and movie series in Star Trek. So like I can't remember who it was, but like, you know who played he was just in the Wolverine and Deadpool movie. Uh, who's the flame guy? Inferno? Is that his name? Um, anyways, he was also in Star Trek as well. They used a lot of actors from other TV series in Picard. But anyways, to kind of bring it back, so season 3 of Star Trek Picard was like, to me, like the best Trek I've seen in a very long time. But like I go back to that Enterprise on the top right corner. that Enterprise is a culmination of my childhood. It reminds me of when I was growing up. It reminds me of hiding in the covers. It reminds me of like collecting comic books. It reminds me of the 90s when I collected X-Men cards, because all this stuff was going on. But like having something that big, the fat one, you know, like bring back that nostalgia respark. When I saw it, now Slider, when they, I think it was episode 9, Vox, where, you know, obviously Liam Shaw, anyways, I'm not going to say what happens, but something happens to the captain and they got to go back to the museum, and they go to that one bay that they kind of like always mention, and then it opens and I'm like, I know what this is. I know what this is, right? And you see the Enterprise D like in the dark silhouettes, and you can ask D, I started to tear up. I started crying because like everything that I remember of my childhood came back when that one iconic spaceship made it back to TV. Like, and I'm not saying like it was little tears. I started crying like a giddy schoolboy because everything, man. And then they walked into the bridge and it all lit up, and you hear the little noise, like the, you know, the TNG computer noise, right? The little clicks and pops and hisses, and everything turns on. And I'm just like, oh my God. And then finally they mount up for the last rescue, the old fogies, man. And he hits engage, and you see that big fat one come out of that hangar bay, and it literally blasts off. Man, like I'm getting goosebumps anyway. So yeah, that's how much I enjoyed that. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had goosebumps when that came out. That was amazing. Yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I was like, wow, like they really hit it with that part, you know. And that's what I was kind of saying, is that like you don't need all the special effects, you know. You just need like good storytelling and moments like that, you know, that really like, you know, get that emotion for people, you know. And I'll take that over special effects any day. Is a really good story, and that's, you know, what Star Trek had. You know, they had amazing writers, you know, and just the actors. I mean, it was an amazing series, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like all the episodes, there was just so many that were good, you know, that touched on different things, and you know, they made you think too. That was the thing. It wasn't just like, oh, they're, you know, it's this sci-fi, but you know, they're flying through space and shooting people, and okay, that's cool, but it's like, you know, there's problems, there's issues, things are going wrong. How do we fix it? You know, what are we gonna do? Like, you know, so yeah, I like that kind of storytelling.
You know what was so good about that series, because I told you the movies just kind of ruined it for me. And like Generations, I'm not a fan of Generations. You know, I think they did the Enterprise D dirty. I think they did Kirk dirty. You know what I mean?
They
And then
crashed it.
don't even get me started on Insurrection, where like, okay, we decided to go to this planet because Picard wants to have a one night stand thing, right? You know, I wasn't a fan of that
Yeah.
either. But when we had this, we got closure with everybody. They gave us closure with our favorite characters. To me, like if you really think about it, like now that I think about it, because Kirk was always my favorite. I really enjoyed Uhura, Spock, but it's the TNG crew all the way, man. Like, because that's the one that I grew up with the most, the Rick Berman era. I got my closure. They got to finally play their last poker game. We got to meet
Mhm.
Picard's son, and like, you know, the
Yeah.
legacy goes on. 7 of 9 that we've been trying to get her on the podcast, but she's now left X, so
All
we can't
right.
do. Yeah, we've been trying our best to get Jerry Ryan on, like, but like just having all that closure, having all that familiarity. You're right. The storytelling was phenomenal. And just to kind of get even with the spaceship, getting the closure with the fat one on the right hand corner, which is phenomenal storytelling. And I'll never forget that. And ever since then, it's like Trek has not been the same. I don't know if you've seen Section 31. It was trash. Um, the series finale of Discovery was trash. No offense. But that's me, right? I live in the Rick Berman era. So what about you, D?
I'm really loving your guys' stories and just kind of geeking out for the last almost half hour.
Was it a half an hour
um,
trek? Damn.
almost. So yeah, it's really cool to see, because I mean, I've watched all these shows, and you know, all these episodes with Hinano, and I used to watch a little bit when we could catch it when I was really young. But I got more into it, you know, after meeting Hinano, and yeah, it's just really cool to hear, like, you know, there's fans out there, yeah, and it was, I enjoyed season 3 as well of Picard. I think it was like so much action, and it was all like so much meaningfulness in all the episodes. And each time that we had to wait, like, till the next week, I was like, no, this is like back in the Sci-Fi Friday days where we had to wait a
Yeah.
whole week. I'm like, no, this is not cool. And we couldn't not watch it, so we could kind of binge 2 episodes. Like, you couldn't do that. It's
No.
um um but yeah, oh, and don't forget the carpet in
Yeah, the carpet.
yeah, you're having some kind of, okay, he's gonna go fix it. I was like, I can't see you. But yeah, season 3 was well done. I loved all the characters, and really happy that we got to see them one more time come together. And yeah, Jerry Ryan is like so badass in that, and just the whole like interaction between her and Shaw was like, I think like the best for me, because he's like basically a dick, but he like means it, like he means well, um but just in his own way. And at the end, well, when you guys, if go and watch it, I highly recommend it. But at the end, it's like the way that it was like the send off. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so like, you're muted.
It was a 10-episode movie. The entire
Yeah.
series was a movie. Like episode 3, when they threw the asteroid at a spaceship, I was like, "What? That's crazy!
Only Star Trek.
That's the record maneuver
Yeah.
right there. What?" So
Yeah, very
real
cool.
quick, real quick,
Yeah.
before we because we're gonna probably end it soon. I wanted to show this
Yeah.
off. I know it's not show and tell, but I want to give a big shout out to Key Comics, because Key sent me a bunch of Star Trek books right here, Slider.
Oh, yeah.
So
awesome.
let me see if I can get there right here. So shout out to Key. And guys, like, this is awesome for me as a collector. Like, this
Oh, I
is
love
right up
that
my
one.
alley right here, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, like tons of books, guys. But like, needless to say, Slider, there is a duplicate in here that I'm gonna send to you. So I'm gonna send you this one right here. Yeah. So this is a duplicate right here. Shout out to Key Comics right here. And since I have a duplicate right here, and you are a big fan of Star Trek, that is coming to you, my brother.
Sweet.
Yeah,
that's
man.
awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Of course.
That's
Of course.
cool, man. Yeah.
But yeah, man, like I said, like I really wanted to talk with you about Star Trek. I'm sorry if the audience has to deal with the geekiness of Star Trek, but it's a rarity we get someone on the channel that knows what we're talking about, because we live in a Star Wars community here with Vivi. So and I got to tell you, Star Wars over Star Trek any day on the battle. I'm just going to say. Space magic over tech. I just got to tell you. Anyway.
And when are you guys gonna battle it out in your Viviverse? Between the Borg and the Borg.
Shields, transporters, warp. Need I say more? But anyways, anyways, D, go ahead. We're gonna close it out really soon because Slider it's getting late for him.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like it's been really cool just hearing all the talks about sci-fi and all the shows that we all used to watch, like us three used to watch when you were younger, or just after, like I said, meeting Hinano, and just kind of have something in common with other people in the community. So it's really cool to have you on, Slider. And before we let you go, there's
I have
always
one more question before we give him that one.
Oh, okay. Because that's what I was gonna. Okay, but yeah, just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time, and yeah, I can't wait for like other sci-fi shows that come up that are new or continuation of what we talked about, and yeah, we can like discuss, maybe have a space open, and we can just geek out together, because that'll be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, like literally, I don't know if a lot of people show up, but I would love to do a Star Trek space with you, and maybe we'll have Trekkies pour in. If not, we could just have geeky conversations about this, because I could go on for days about this subject matter. I mean, I could literally talk your brains off for like 48 hours about Star Trek, my favorite episode, which characters I like, and that's my question to you. 3 captains, rank them, your first to your third. Who are the 3, my friend?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go with. I'll go 3, 2, 1. So my third favorite captain, I would have to go with uh Archer.
Ooh.
That would be 3. 2, I would go with Cisco,
Wait,
which
why
I
though?
mean,
Why Archer? Why Archer first?
because he was the one of the originals. I mean, he was on the first ships that went out there. I mean, like he didn't even have warp. Like what they have, like warp
That's
3, I
true.
think was like the max. And he was out there being an ambassador for the Federation. Meeting all these different the Vulcans and everybody for the first time. So Andorians and everything. So I just thought that was really cool because he was basically the one that blazed the trail for it. And maybe that wasn't my favorite TV show series. I mean, I thought it was okay, but
Yeah.
but I thought he did a good job, as a captain. So yeah, so that's why I put him, up there. And then Cisco, of course, I love Deep Space Nine. Like, you know, just how he had to kind of deal with the same kind of stuff, where you have the Cardassians, you have a wormhole, everybody's kind of fighting over it. You've got, the Dominion on the other side, and he's like an emissary, but he's also, the commander, captain. So that was just cool. I like that. It was a little bit different from what you get from like,
Yeah.
Enterprise. And then I'm gonna say Picard for my number one. And it's just because he's such a you know great leader.
This is why we're friends. This is why
So
we're friends.
yeah. So Picard, just because I mean, I don't really think I need to say much about it. Just that's where I'm at. I know I didn't put in Kirk, but I wasn't. I don't know. Kirk was he was kind of like a cowboy, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, he did it. William Shatner did a great job, and but that Star Trek was a little, it was before my time, so
Yeah.
I didn't really get to watch it that much. So that's kind of why I don't put him like in the top 3. So yeah,
So you and I are similar. So my third, I'm gonna tell you my third. Now this is something that's probably gonna like trip everyone out because my third favorite captain is Shaw. I really enjoyed Liam Shaw. I also like the actor. I think he's phenomenal. He actually chats with me on IG, like he chats with his fans. So really cool guy.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, I really dug that type of captain because we never saw that type of captain where he's by the book. He's also an asshole. He's by the book asshole that also wants things like straight nip tucked everything, no curves or no wrinkles in your shirt type of captain,
yeah,
no dust anywhere on the nacelles and stuff like that. I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed the fact that like we got to see him try to be battle tested and he wasn't the best at it because he would try to follow the book and mess up. Like
yeah.
if you notice in Picard, he gets beaten up a lot, right? But he
Oh
also
yeah,
has some really awesome one-liners. Like he's very witty, when they're in the turbo
yeah,
lift and he's like, so you guys messed up. I'll tell you what, since you saved my ship, I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to get your shit in gear and tell whatever bullshit story you guys want. And then I'm going to make sure to sick the cops on you. You got 5 minutes, go. And he walks away, right? I really dug
yeah,
that. And then what happens to him like at the tail end, I really got that in the end because you could see he was a good captain. He all he wanted to do was take care of his crew. And that's the whole point of Star Trek that I love the most about. It wasn't about me, I. It was about teamwork. And it's about this captain's in charge of his crew. And he will go down with the ship before his crew goes down with the ship. And so he was the type of captain that really resonated that for me. And so I really enjoyed Liam Shaw. My second favorite captain is Cisco. Love Cisco.
okay,
I love the
yeah,
fact that you have an African American as the captain. I love that he came into Star Trek as like battle tested and a warrior because he lost his wife. He's got
yeah,
his estranged son he's trying to raise in like a war-torn alien artifact space station. That, by the way, people don't realize Deep Space Nine was a ripoff of Babylon 5. They literally took J. Michael Straczynski's scripts, copied it. You know what I mean? Like the
yeah,
Dominion
yeah.
War,
Mhm.
Cardassians, that was pretty much was the Centauris and the Narns. All that was like all intermixed into Deep Space Nine. So that's the only thing that I didn't like about it. But other than that, I really love the storytelling. They pushed the envelope in the storytelling. It was the most provocative Star Trek out there because it wasn't like it wasn't sterile. It wasn't all techie babble nonsense. You actually
Yeah.
had really good stories. It was about the characters and not necessarily the lore and the background behind it, even though it was such an exotic show. And just the fact that you had like Major Kira Nerys, I had a big crush on her. She was like literally like this badass chick that I had like a poster of her in my room. Obviously, she was in her uniform, stuff like that, right? But like, I had a poster of her. I had like the poster of Deep Space Nine everywhere. I have still a sign, a picture of all of them that my grandma got for me with the COA in the background. I still have it in the closet till this day.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, Deep
That's
Space
awesome.
Nine was big for me. They brought Worf in, then the Klingons came in. You had the Defiant, the
Yeah.
Wormhole. There was so much going on between like espionage and religion and
Yeah.
like exploration between. And so I really enjoyed that one. So he's my second, and obviously the first is Picard. Straight tested, one of the best captains out there. He's another one where it's like, the crew before all, but also for humanity and mankind. And I'm with you on that. Like, Kirk did a great job. I think William Shatner is still the GOAT. I never really watched the TOS era. I watched the movies, so like still till
Yeah.
this day, I think
Yeah.
Wrath of Khan is my favorite movie.
Oh
Wrath
yeah.
of Khan is like, it's just, there's just something about that. And I'm sorry, J.J. Abrams, I'm sorry. The first movie was good. Everything else is just crap for me. I like, that's a
Yeah.
different universe. The Kelvin universe is a different universe, but yeah, Picard all the way from me. And then lastly, we'll have Dee answer the question, and then we'll get out of here with your final question.
I don't think I have a top three. I don't really have a top three. Can I just say that my favorite captain is Picard?
Yeah.
Yeah, just because he's the one that I grew up with whenever I could watch some sci-fi when I was younger. I did like Janeway. A lot of people didn't, just because she's like the
She's a
female.
badass. She's a badass.
Yeah, she's a badass, and I really like that she's also part of what is the other one? Star Trek, the one with the cartoon.
Oh, Prodigy. That was another one. Have you
Prodigy.
seen that, Slider? Star
Yeah.
Trek Prodigy?
I've watched some episodes of it, but no, I haven't watched it like all the way through.
You wasn't into that cartoon?
No, yeah, no. I mean, I like the animation. I've never really been into the animation stuff. So
It's
yeah.
understandable.
If you give it a chance, it goes really into the Rick Berman mythology and lore at the very tail end. And a lot of the old crew from the Voyager era, they all return in the cartoon, like all of them.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, give it a chance, because I wasn't a fan of like, say, Lower Decks. I thought it got really too raunchy for me, but like Prodigy, and I'm not a cartoon fan either, I really enjoyed it. Like, it's very action packed in the beginning, so it's like it's meant for kids, right? But if you
Yeah.
really give it a chance, there's so much lore at the very end, like the season finale of season 1, you find out what happens to specific ships, like the Enterprise E. You know what I mean? So
Okay, yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a chance, man. Like, it gets so much better at the tail end. And then the second season was good, a little bit. It gets very time travel-y, very timey-wimey, but it was also very good as well. And like I said, you're gonna have like familiar characters come back, and you're gonna be like, oh, it's so good to be back here, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll definitely put that one on the watch list. So
okay, last
Yeah.
question. I know there's so many questions. Like, your favorite Enterprise. I'm gonna end it there.
oh man. That's I mean, I'm gonna go
Tough.
with Voyager.
Okay,
Yeah, I know.
that's
I
not the
mean, like,
Enterprise, but okay.
no, I know, but I'm like, if we're talking like ships,
Ship.
but yeah, I mean that, like, if we're talking like straight up Enterprise, I was gonna go with the Fat Boy. So, like I actually like that one. So, because it's the one I know, and it's just has the most nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say besides that one, I would go with Voyager. So.
What about you, D?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Slider as well, the Voyager. I mean, that's
Really?
yeah.
Nobody picked an Enterprise, huh? Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you which one I really enjoyed. And it's probably an Enterprise that no one would have thought of, and
Hmm.
that is the Enterprise G.
Gee, which
Yeah.
one is that?
So that was basically the Titan, right? Here, I'll show you. I'll pull it up.
Oh.
Yeah, it's this one right here. Let me see. Yeah, this one. So this ship right here. So this was
Okay.
actually the Titan that they renamed the
Oh,
Enterprise
Riker's
G.
one.
Actually, so
Yeah.
this is Seven of Nines, right? So
Oh.
yeah, I really like the design because, like I said, I'm a big fan of the Connie, and so
Hmm.
this reminds me of like the Enterprise A, and so I really enjoyed this. And if people don't realize, this is actually a Shangri-La model. I'm big on ships, so I have like a bunch of ships in my closet, and so they based it off of this, that Terry Matalas wanted to find a ship that was familiar to people's eyes, because what he was trying to do in Picard season 3 is he wanted to
Mm.
bring back that familiar feeling, because fans were so jaded of season 1 and 2 in Discovery, that he
Yeah.
wanted a ship that really brought back the familiarity of Star Trek. And then to find out later on that they make this the Enterprise G, I just fell in love with this. So that's my favorite Enterprise right there.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay. Very cool.
that's cool. That's pretty. That was a pretty awesome Enterprise, But I don't know, like I wasn't a big fan of like the original Enterprise, so it was kind of But that is definitely an awesome Enterprise.
Well, I did mention the A, the Enterprise A, not the old TOS one, right?
Oh, okay.
So
I was gonna say I thought you were talking about the original. I'm like, yeah, I don't know
the,
about
the
that.
movie one, the movie one.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because so if you look at it, it kind of looks like the movie one, right? With like the nacelles, it has that slant to it right over here. So, and then right here, DDS, the Future Enterprise for All Good Things. Oh, with the 3 engines. So he's talking about the fat one with the 3 nacelles. And DDS is also a big Star Trek fan. So, can you show us an evolution diagram of the Enterprise? I don't have it in front of me right now, and I know we probably got to get out of here. But the final question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Slider, as we always like to give our guests the chance to also ask us, so do you have a question that you want to ask Hinano and I before we leave?
All right. Okay. Okay.
Sorry to be on the spot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think here, but okay, I got one. So
Okay.
I'm gonna pivot from Star Trek, and I'm gonna go to Stargate because that's like probably my second favorite series. Who was your favorite character on Stargate SG-1?
Ooh. Go ahead, D. Give me a minute. Oh, she got to think now. Okay. So
I gotta think
honestly,
too.
I like Jack O'Neill, but the Richard Dean Anderson version, not Kurt Russell, because I think that Stargate, excuse me, pivot. Stargate got very lighthearted with him, and I liked his very cool, calm approach to things versus like Kurt Russell was more of like a hardened type of military man. So I like the fact that Richard Dean Anderson did such a really good job in terms of just being very, very cool, calm, and very slapsticky. So I say Richard Dean Anderson as Jack O'Neill, along with Teal'c as
Yeah.
a runner-up.
Yes, that's my first one. It's Teal'c, indeed. Yes, he is my favorite one.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, those would probably be my two also. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and if
Nice.
you're
You guys
going
are
now with
awesome.
Atlantis now,
Oh,
my favorite character was Ronan Dex. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed him, as like
yeah,
the brawn that was like basically Aquaman, right? He was Aquaman,
yeah.
right? So yeah, I dug Ronan Dex, and also I was a big fan of Universe. A lot of people didn't like Universe, and so my favorite character in Universe was gosh, who was that character? It was a character that was recurring. Shucks.
Eli?
No, it wasn't Eli. Dang.
What did he play as? What was his rank?
It wasn't Dr. Rush either. He was the general. Who's the general in there? Young, Colonel Young. I enjoyed Colonel
Yeah.
Young because I like that they made him flawed. You know what I mean? Like he was flawed right off the bat. He was having an affair with like his second in command. He was having wife issues. He's also like stressed out and he shouldn't have been in command. And then he gets put in this like situation. It's just bad after bad after bad. So yeah, I know you didn't ask for those three, but I gave them to you.
I know that's cool. Yeah, he really did good with that character. So
Yeah.
that was awesome.
And I want to know what happened. What happened after the deep sleep?
Oh
Come on.
man, yeah,
They're
that's why.
still traveling.
That's why I don't like it. That's the one reason why I do not like that one. Like, yeah, I know they're just traveling through the void. Like I guess forever.
I got the destiny right here, my friend.
Oh my god.
So
yeah, even our kid was like, so what happened?
The BC 350 right here, my friend. So yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
And
I know. They really need to bring that back some way.
Prometheus. So I even got a Firefly right here. I've got the Serenity right here too.
nice.
So.
Yeah, they need to give us closure.
Yeah, for sure, definitely on that one.
Yeah, it's a bummer though. Like the reason why they canceled because the production. I mean, the production was just well done, but it's expensive, right? So and they put a lot of their eggs in that show to try to get it to be gritty. They wanted it to be kind of like Battlestar Galactica, and you know they missed the mark in the first season. I think the second season they finally got their stride, and they just didn't have the chance to really pick up on the third. So that's what it is. But Slider, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you for coming by and hanging out with us. Before you leave right here, I want to tell the audience that we are running a community-sponsored giveaway, guys. If you want to win something, because now's the time, enter hashtag engage for a chance to win a Deathstroke, a McFarlane Toys digital Deathstroke, as well as this Spawn trash can right here. And basically, this gives you utility into our Discord. And this is just a really cool collectible from McFarlane Toys Digital. Shout out to Atem. He donated in our last episode. So we used those proceeds to fund today's giveaway. And also, Slider, because you're an awesome dude, we're going to give you our second edition slab. These are hard to get. We barely give this to anybody because this is our favorite piece. This is my favorite NFT that we hold. And this is an NFT that has in our entire family. Myself as Batman over there. You've got Dee as Wonder Woman, my daughter as Punchline, and then our son as Superman right there. So this is going to you. This has some really great utility into our Discord. This allows you, if you decide to trade this in, you can enter any of our giveaways. This also gets you 5 entries in the wheel, but you got to give it back to us or you keep it. This also goes for anybody that is not in any of our Discord or don't hold any of our assets. If you by some chance are able to get one of these, this gets you a lot of utility. So this is going to you, Slider, and then I'm also going to send you a Deathstroke. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure to talk to you and geek out specifically on the fandom that I've been wanting to talk with somebody about on air. And so thank you, my brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, guys, thanks. That's awesome. Like I love that cover you guys did with that. So that's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's go. And guys, before we get out of here, I'm going to play the same commercial that we played at the beginning. Now that we have more people, we will be right back. And guys, more to come with that. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to give everyone 1 more minute to enter this giveaway, and then we're going to get out of here. Dee, please close out the show.
Yeah, just want to say a big thank you to Slider once again for your time and coming up and speaking with us, and just and just geeking out with us. That's been really cool, and I hope the audience also enjoyed it as well. I know there's Trekkies out there. We may be a smaller community, but we are out there. And thank you, chats, for being here, watching or listening, and just starting us off, for the weekend. So I hope everyone has a great and safe weekend, and I hope you're able to enjoy it with your loved ones or, by yourself. And yeah, I appreciate everyone for coming, and we'll see you all somewhere in the spaces.
And with that being said, good luck, everyone, for the first
luck.
place winner for the Deathstroke, the McFarlane Toys digital Deathstroke. Good luck. Let's see who's going to be the winner, and may the juju be with you. The comic guy. Let's go.
Comic guy. Let's go. Congrats.
This hands up for you, my brother. Thank you so much for coming by and giving us support as always. Shout out to the comic guy. We got to meet him in Vegas, and I am looking forward to Vegas this year. I hope you're coming. Slider, we would love for you to come and meet us as well. I don't know if you can leave or join one of those cons, but that is a con that both D and I are going to be attending this year. So shout out to them. And then also one last time, guys, this is one more time, the final prize of the night. Good luck, fam.
Good luck.
Khalees, let's go.
Nice.
Long-time channel member. Good to see you. And that is it, guys. That is the show. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. Slider, final words of inspiration for the audience.
I would say just enjoy what you collect, because at the end of the day, it's a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. And, I think that gets lost sometimes with the whole, NFTs, market, what's coming out, the hype. And, I would just say, collect really what you enjoy, and, don't worry about all the other stuff, because, if prices are going to go up, they're going to go up. If they're not, then at least you have something that you really love, that you want in your collection, that you can show off to people, that you can just have and maybe never show anybody it. And yeah, that's what I would say.
I love that. I love that. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. Slider, awesome to have you on. We'd always love to have you come on. It's an open door policy here. Once you come on, if you ever see us on air and you want to just chat or be in the chat, you're always welcome. So there you go. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We will be back on Sunday for End of the Verse with Doobs as our guest for VV Cribs. And it sounds like we're in for a big surprise. So I can't wait for Sunday. Also, I'm building a structure in a volcano. I'm going to show that off as well on Sunday, because I've gotten a little bit farther with that. So looking forward to that, guys. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Take care and aloha.
Bye.
So tune in every week and join the ride with a real uncommon podcast. And we're here to provide